John, you excited about getting on a plane to Houston?
Well, I won't get into my spiel on Texas, but I'll say this. This should be a thrilling series. The Yankees, I feel much better about them than I did earlier. I think they're on a roll at this moment. They've got power, they've got pitching, and I think they have a chance.
Well, we're going to talk about that series. We'll wrap up their division series against Cleveland. We haven't yet talked about the Mets and how things ended for them and what they're going to do moving forward. We'll talk about both of those things. And we'll also talk a little bit about the new playoff format that seems to be upsetting everyone. That's if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Well, John, we're sitting here in Midtown Manhattan. We have to go from this show directly to the airport together and fly to Houston. That's because as we're taping this last night, finally, this heavily rained, heavily off-date series between the Yankees and Cleveland Guardians, I did remember Guardians that time, the Yankees prevailed. So I guess just big picture, what'd you think of this series?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fans thought it was a relief. I think the players thought it was a relief. I think that clubhouse celebration was rather sedate.
Yeah, maybe because they had to get on the plane and play today.
I'm going to give them credit for being mature and
okay.
understanding this is the first round. They have a long way to go. I don't think I've been in this. There was water. I mean, I assume it was champagne on the floor. But I didn't see.
You didn't think it was a slip and slide?
No, they weren't spraying us. I don't think they were spraying each other. They were very mature about it. So I mean, I took that as a good sign. Who knows? Difficult to predict these series. I did pick Astros in 7, but I think I kind of feel like the Yankees have more of a chance than I would have thought going in here.
Yeah, maybe they were subdued because they're familiar with this, right? And what we would consider the Aaron Judge era, these last 6 years. They made the playoffs 6 years in a row. They're 5 for 5 against AL Central teams. They've advanced all 5 times they've faced them. They're 12-4 against them. The only other time they've advanced is they beat the A's in a wild card series. They're 8-15 against everybody else in the playoffs. That includes, obviously, 2 lost ALCS to the Astros. This is a step up in weight class for them. And this group, again, if we're considering this kind of the Judge era, its team has changed a lot since 2017. When they've stepped up, they haven't stepped forward. Why would you think they can win this series?
Yeah, first of all, a lot of those wins against the Central were against the Twins, and the Twins just cannot beat the Yankees.
3 times against Cleveland now.
But they were closer. There have been closer matches. Cleveland has beaten them in the playoffs in the past. I understand different players, but I felt that the Guardians were a tougher team than those Twins teams. I never gave them any chance. I did pick the Guardians in this series. I was wrong. It happens. I've been wrong a lot. This playoff series have been some upsets, clearly, but I thought their pitching was very, very good. Obviously, Savali did not look good yesterday. They went with a guy on rest. There might be some second guessing. Hard to second guess Tito. He's going to be a Hall of Fame manager, but that may have been a mistake. Maybe with Bieber would have been a little bit better. Obviously, Cortez was fantastic, as you pointed out in the post, and Yankees pitching has been very good. They've got that combination of pitching and power. They don't manufacture runs. Almost all their runs come on the home runs. But, if Bader's joining Stanton and Judge, maybe they can do it. I feel like they've got a chance. I really do.
I think Aaron Savali played the part of like Chad OJ yesterday. Like the weak
You have a good memory.
Weak right-hander who comes in to face the Yankees and just no shot. So what do I think works against the Yankees is with the rain out and the schedule, which is a quirky schedule this year. We're used to, me and you've been around too long, there's usually an off day between games 5 and 6 for travel. There's not in this. So right now the Yankees, if this series went the whole way, are looking at 8 games in 9 days. And because of how this series ended, it's Jameson Taillon in 1. It also means he's got to get 5, and that so he's 1, Severino's 2, Cole and Cortez are 3 and 4, all on normal rest or more. Then Taillon in 5, Severino in 6, and then Cole would have to come back short. Whereas Houston, they've been sitting around. I think Houston's played like 3 games in 2 weeks. They have. It's not just that they have 4 good starting pitchers, but they have 3 good starting pitchers who will be in their bullpen. So they have a way to get through this series with a lot of length from starting pitchers, and those starting pitchers dominated the Yankees this season.
Yeah, I mean, on balance, I think the rainout helped the Yankees because they were able to go to Cortez. That was a good move by Boone. So I think they'll take it. They needed to get past this series. I understand that there's no rest. They're starting with Tyone, who, he's a good pitcher. He's not Cortez. He's not Cole. I get it. They're at a little bit of a disadvantage. Let's not forget now, Verlander, obviously going to be a Hall of Famer, obviously going to win the Cy Young, one of the greatest pitchers I've ever seen, you've ever seen. However, in his last 6 postseason starts, he is 0-4 with a 6 ERA, something like that. So he can be beaten. For whatever reason, I have a better feeling about this. I know people are into conspiracy theories about the rain. Look, both teams wanted to play that game. They tried. They tried their hardest.
And neither team is in control. MLB's in control.
Right, exactly. So there's no conspiracy there, but it did work out in the Yankees' favor that they get Savali versus Cortez. And you have to get past that round. And I understand on paper Houston looks better. They were 7 games better than the Yankees this year. Obviously, the Yankees had very weak moments at the end of the year. The last half, they were around a 500 team. I get it, but right now, the feeling I have off of that series, the way the Yankees were challenged, I don't mind the lack of off days. They had 2 pitchers they didn't even use. They could have added pitchers because, as you said, there aren't many off days. Marinaccio was added. I think that's a big plus. He was, in my mind, one of their 2 or 3 best relievers this year. I feel good for the Yankees at this point. I think they have a legit shot. I know some of the experts are telling me Houston's the most complete team, all this. Well, look, the Dodgers are out. The Braves are out. Short series, and we'll talk about the format issue later. The format controversy. I'm not sure why it is a controversy.
Save it. Save it.
The underdog often wins. So I understand the Yankees are an underdog, and the Yankees have sympathy now because they're playing the Astros, who are even more hated than the Yankees nationally. So it's kind of turned their tables, and it's going to be interesting because of that.
Yeah, well, to me, the Astros, to some degree, have outrun the controversy since this is their 6th straight ALCS. I think it suggests that they don't need garbage cans or buzzers to win baseball games. To your point, there were 4 100-win teams. 3 are out. The Astros are the other. Now, the Yankees aren't exactly a limp team. They won 99 games this year, so they're strong. But just you said something that I think is pertinent earlier, which is home runs. Right? The Yankees are good at 2 things. They're good at run prevention. They don't get a lot of credit for it, but their pitching and their defense are generally good. Their defense get a little sloppy sometimes, but it's generally good. So their run prevention is good. The other way they score is home runs, almost completely in this division series. Against Houston this year, against their starting pitchers, they had 15 hits in 42-plus innings. It was like 42 and a third innings, just against their starting pitchers. They had 16 walks. They had more walks than hits, and 6 of the 15 hits were homers. And so that's how all the games against Houston this year, they lost the season series 5-2. All the games were competitive, within 3 runs, 2 runs, 1 run. They got no hit in one of these. So to me, I think you've discussed the formula, which is they've got to draw some walks and hit some homers. So I think pressure on Rizzo, Stanton, and Judge. Judge had 2 homers in this division series. He did not hit well in this series, though. They need a great performance from their best player.
Yeah, he looked better in that last game, so maybe he's back on track. I think he was kind of thrown out of rhythm. He is a team guy, but obviously in the last 2 weeks, focus was on him and trying to break that record. They were in the position they were going to be in, which was going to win that division, going to be short of Houston, not going to have the home field, and it was all on Judge, and I think, frankly, his family's there, Maris is there. He had to go for home runs, so I think he went out of his game, and it took him out for an extra few days, and I feel like he probably is back now. Stanton has been a great postseason performer, so I have faith in him. Outstanding, and so Rizzo has too. Rizzo is a baseball savant. The guy, sometimes he does some quirky plays. That one where he's trying to steal, I didn't... But, he gets away with it a lot. I think he is a savant.
He thought he was invisible.
I don't know. Glaber is the guy who thinks he's invisible.
Glaber and Javi Baez think they're invisible.
Right. But Rizzo is a great postseason performer. So I think he and Stanton are postseason performers. Judge, I was surprised he had most home runs in the winner-take-all games in the history of baseball.
We play a lot more winner-take-all games these days
obviously
than
it's not going to be Mantle. It's going to be somebody who's played a bunch of rounds. I get it, but it's still surprising because obviously the guys on Houston have played many more postseason games. Obviously, the old Yankee teams have played many more postseason games. And Judge, frankly, has been good in postseason games, but he has not been like he was during this regular season. But for whatever reason, I thought going in, Houston was the biggest favorite to get to the World Series, the most obvious team. And that's why when I did the odds board, they had the lowest odds, even lower than the Dodgers. But right now, I feel like the Yankees have a pretty decent shot at it. I did pick the Astros in 7, but coming off that series, I think that was a good test for them against the Guardians. The Guardians' pitching is very, very good, and I know they play the game well. They have good contact hitters. That Kwan is very impressive. Obviously, Houston much more firepower. Big difference. That's the difference. You got Jordan, you've got Altuve, who's a big power. Now, he has not looked too good.
I think he was 0 for 16.
With a bunch of strikeouts. Yeah. He did this in 2020 at one point,
and he was yippy in the field again. Like, he was having some problems.
It's going to be interesting in Yankee Stadium if he's yippy, and I'm going to guess he's not going to get a good reception.
But he hasn't gotten a good reception for a few years. He gets it the worst, and he kills it. It's like booing the wrestler. You know, like he's coming in off the top rope against them.
And that's why I wrote a column back at one of the games. Stop booing him. It's obviously not working, and but it's going to happen, and it's going to be worse because I don't know if you heard it, but they were saying bleep Altuve.
Yeah,
some of the players.
I was with Ian going downstairs, and we heard it. Yeah,
yeah, not the players, but the fans were not already warming up for Altuve. So we'll see.
He ain't Josh Naylor, okay? Like he's probably going to handle it pretty well.
Probably, but he is right now a little behind, slumping.
So you mentioned they're better. The one thing that Houston has in common offensively with Cleveland is Cleveland strikes out at the lowest percentage in the sport. Houston's number 2, but they had about 80 more homers this year than Cleveland. So, like, they're putting it in play, which kind of disturbed the Yankees a little bit in this series, putting it in play. So Houston puts it in play, forces you to play defense. And to me, and we talked about this a little in the press box yesterday, John, I think Houston's favored. I think the Yankees have a puncher's chance because of the run prevention and the power. If they had a healthy Benintendi and LeMahieu, 2 guys who I think would hit good pitching, lengthen the lineup, just cause Houston to throw more pitches, play with guys on base more, that would be such a big factor. But they've already ruled out Benintendi. As we're speaking, we don't know on LeMahieu and his foot situation. I would think it'd be very difficult for him to have big impact in this series. So I think the loss of not the loss, but the fact that they might never show up in this series is a big factor.
Yeah, LeMahieu, from what I hear, is a 3-month injury, not a 3-day injury. Very tough guy. He would play if he could, obviously. I saw him working out at second. He looks fine in the field, but they say that he's not really
he can't
the same
spin on his foot to
hitting.
Hit.
Yeah, so, if you've got LeMahieu, who's just a defensive player, I'm not sure he's going to be on this roster. I think the biggest question is what they're going to do at shortstop and how they figure that out. And also left field with the Crawford boxes and the short left field. Do you think that they possibly go to
I think they
Stanton
do play Stanton
in left field and then make Carpenter the because Carpenter, frankly, on the percentages, when he was healthy, was the second best hitter on the team this year, so it would be a big plus. Now, he has not looked great in his couple at-bats, but he obviously has it in him. It would help their lineup a bit to have Carpenter in there and have Stanton play in the outfield.
So, I don't know this for sure. So, I know Verlander's 1. Is Valdez 2? If Valdez is 2, I think tonight.
I would think so, right?
I would think in game 1, Stanton plays left and Carpenter DHs against the righty. And I think they see the 4 at-bats from Carpenter. How does he look? Because this year, as opposed to recent years, he actually hit lefties well in that whatever 200 plate appearance situation. So I think if he looks good tonight, they might play Stanton in left field, in front of the Crawford box. It's a small left field.
He was great this year.
Yeah.
But what about shortstop? It is interesting. Yeah. IKF, they loved him throughout the year. The metrics were good. He had that bad game in Cleveland.
The eyesight was always bad, though.
Yeah, you've said it. You've said it all the way through the year.
I've been spending 6 months saying, are they watching
your eyesight's better than mine, apparently.
Yeah.
I don't wear glasses, but maybe I need them. I didn't see it. They professed confidence in him. That doesn't mean that much. They might have been thinking, he's still a question because they certainly flipped when he had a little bit of a shaky game. I don't think he had errors, but a couple shaky plays, and they put in Cabrera, who is an infielder by trade, but to me, he does not look like, Rosario or a guy who's a veteran
The
shortstop
question
at
is,
this
should they
point.
play Peraza at shortstop and put Cabrera back in left field?
That's what I'm wondering. Now, Cabrera is not a great – I mean, he's an infielder by trade, so he's not a great outfielder. I think in Houston they're probably going to do what we think and have Stanton out there, right? So,
yeah,
but
at least for game one, I would think.
But shortstop is a question. You know, Cabrera's going to have to be in the lineup because he obviously can hit, and he seems to be enjoying the moment. Maybe not as much as Bader. Have you ever seen it? Bader reminds me of Leyritz, He loves this moment. I mean, he's a New Yorker. That's part of the reason, I think, small part that they got him. They got him because of the metrics in center field. Certainly wasn't the power. He had 5 home runs, but, I mean, this guy has been unbelievable. To have 3 home runs, to out-homer Judge and out-homer Stanton.
Well, just like the regular season, John, the Yankee center fielder's hitting a lot of homers. It's just it's right. Bader now instead of Judge. So why don't we wrap up this segment by going to the end, which is bullpen a little bit. There was a lot of worry about the Yankee bullpen, and so I don't know if this is Cleveland or not, but their endgame guys were really good in this series.
Wandy. Unbelievable.
Well, every day Eddie Guardado showed up on the Yankees.
Incredible.
He pitched in all 5 games.
Every game, and he was really good. I mean, the guy's got...
Loaizaga, really good, right?
Yeah.
Clay Holmes, when he did pitch, I think he pitched in 3 games in this series. He was excellent.
Not 3, not game 3, but 3 games.
3 games, right. Well played.
Yeah.
If they could get those guys to consistently in winning situations pitch well, I'm with you. Marinaccio pitched very well this year. Trevino pitched well at the end.
Yes.
It gives them, again, with so many games in so many days, you've got to trust more. I mean, Peralta's amazing. Maybe he is going to pitch in all 7 games after pitching in all 5. But
so you think they're adding pitchers now? Certainly they're going to add Marinaccio, but I mean, they didn't use Litke, they didn't use Castro, and they didn't use Herman.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was me. I thought Herman was pretty good this year. That you would skip him for the entire 5 games.
Yeah.
I mean
was there? But the question was there an obvious place to use him?
Well, the one mistake, as we've all harped on,
of
Aaron Boone,
right.
Schmidt pitching in the key.
Yeah.
In the middle of the lineup, either Schmidt needed to go first or Herman needed to go first there or something like that. To me, I like Herman. I don't know what they saw that I didn't see. I thought he was really good.
Sometimes they manage the game at 3 o'clock and don't manage the game in front of them.
Yeah,
that
was obviously a mistake. I mean, no matter what they say
don't
about
audible
Schmidt,
great sometimes.
You don't want your 5th best option pitching against the middle of the lineup in the key moment, and that was what they were 167-0 with a multiple run lead in postseason games entering the 9th. And well, we shouldn't harp on that. I mean, they did win the series.
Right.
I don't want to be too negative. Let's be positive now, and I feel positive about them. I think they look good.
One team that has to replace almost its entire relief corps is the New York Mets. And when we come back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, we'll discuss them and their offseason. So, John, we have one New York team obviously still going in the playoffs. The other fell out rather quickly. They had a very bad end game to their season. Couldn't hold off Atlanta, couldn't outdo San Diego. So now we're up to trying to see if they could do better in 2023 in the second year of the Billy Epler administration, the second year of Buck Showalter. And they have a lot of questions this offseason. They have multiple big free agents, really big free agents. Almost their entire starting pitching staff needs to be replaced or re-signed. Almost their entire bullpen needs to be replaced or re-signed. Where do they start? What's the priority?
Well, the free agents. I mean, they've got 7 really good free agents, and they've got to figure out which ones to bring back. And Steve Cohen on our show said you should be able to build a good team on $300 million. It's an oft-repeated quote, and I take him at his word. I don't think they're going to go nuts. Obviously, he can afford it. They can afford it. They're doing better in terms of from a business standpoint, even beyond his reported $17 billion. And we don't know where it is now. The market's gone down a little bit this year, but
you think
who
it's
knows?
16 something?
He may have gone up. I know I've gone down. You've gone down. Most of them.
You peeking at my financials?
Well, I'm assuming.
Okay.
You don't think you pay attention to that, so
no.
I'm just guessing. They got these 7 free agents, so they got to figure that out. First, Carrasco, that's a tough call. It's a $14 million option. He's not a free agent yet. He's the 8th guy versus $3 million buyout. I think they probably pick it up because otherwise, what do you have as your starters? You have Scherzer, you've got Peterson, you've got McGill. At that point, we need to do something. They need to do something.
Let's do it for our colleague Mike Puma wrote about this situation with Carrasco in the New York Post the other day. And to me, unless he has your health stuff on him is terrible.
Yeah.
Isn't he worth a 1-year, $11 million contract?
That's what I think. I think
That's
they probably
right,
do.
because it's a $3 million buyout on a $14 million contract. So
But
it's
it's
an
not a
$11
slam
million.
dunk, is it? I mean, he's good. He had like a 97 ERA plus. He was average this year, right? He was the one guy who did beat the Padres twice in the regular season, and then they didn't use him, and not to pick on them or anything with their
Sounds like you are picking
their
on them.
postseason roster, which they did adjust the postseason roster, right? They started out with Jolie Rodriguez, right, and no Taijuan Walker. I mean, you know, they were overthinking it a bit. I guess they came up with an injury for Jolie somehow, miraculously. Anyway, I think Carrasco is picked up. But those free agents, you've got 7: Diaz, Nimmo, Taijuan Walker, Ottavino, Lugo, Bassett, and DeGrom. And believe it or not, that's my order to bring back. I understand the fans love DeGrom, but he's going to want $40 million. If you want to stay reasonable, it's gonna be hard to go up for $40 million for DeGrom or above. He may want more because Scherzer's got $43 million, right? I don't know. Where do you stand? To me, Diaz, you got to bring him back. Nimmo, I mean, to me, you got to bring him back, but that price tag's going to be huge. So I'm not so sure on that one. Those would be the top two for me, but bullpen, you got to work on the bullpen too. Ottavino and Lugo have been good.
Yeah. So it's funny you use the term reasonable. We're talking about a guy who's going to have a $300 million payroll. So it's already unreasonable to some degree, right?
They're putting in a big effort. Give them credit.
Yep. So, but again, I think our colleague Mike Puma did this exercise during the season where to bring everyone back would be about $340 million. And I bet you by the end, when we see what the final numbers are and everyone, it might even be higher than that if we figure out, like, if DeGrom goes to Texas and this guy goes there, and we add it up, I bet you.
He had DeGrom with $50 million, though.
Yeah.
I'm eliminating that $50 million. I understand the fans want him back, but
no, I'm saying by the end, like if we look at like wherever DeGrom ends up and add it up, I think the number might would have been above 340. If he's staying at $300 million, I think it's difficult, priority list wise, to do that and keep DeGrom, because I do think replacing Nimmo, a center fielder who leads off, it's very difficult. I mean, do you want to risk putting Marte back in center field and then you bring in a Brett Phillips type defensive guy to be his caddy? Do you hope a guy like McNeil could be your leadoff?
You know what the fans are going to say? Go get Judge to play center field, right?
Right, but that's
not.
But once you're spending
likely.
$40 million, what would be more valuable at that point? I would be just then bring back DeGrom if you're going to do 40 on one player.
Oh, I would take Judge over DeGrom.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was me and it's $40 million,
but
I'd rather
what
sign
do they?
Judge. Now, Judge is going to be many more years than DeGrom.
But look at the thing is that in their situation, if we're starting a team and you told me I could spend 40 on either, I would do Judge. But they have no rotation right now. Yeah. Like you've got to win in 2023, right? Like you got to be a good team. I think you could find outfield help. Like if you find Mitch Haniger or someone like
if I could get Judge for the same price as DeGrom, and that's my choice, I have to take one.
Even on this team, Judge. And then you figure out the rotation.
They lacked power. Right. I mean, to me, they were not a powerful team. They did manufacture runs. Good for them. They'd have to go a different route, obviously. But Judge does it all. I mean, the guy steals. He's fantastic.
No, he's a great player.
I don't think they're going to get Judge. So let's not spend too much time on this. I probably shouldn't even brought it up. Nimmo,
we've spent a lifetime. You're bringing up stuff we shouldn't tell you.
I know. You're right. But Nimmo, I'd love to bring him back, but I know that they're talking about how it could be $25 million a year for a guy who before this year, he'd been a little bit, he had some injuries. I don't want to say injury prone. That's not fair.
Like Judge.
He had
like in their walk year, both guys were as healthy as they've ever been.
Right. I mean, he had injuries in the past, but if you look at his record, the last 3 years, I think he's had an 800 OPS. He's improved in center field. He is great in the clubhouse, which is a bonus. I'd love to bring him back, but, the comps, I don't know where Scott Boras is going to go with this, but to me the comps are Ellsbury, and that was many years ago, as you pointed out last time. So I think we're probably looking at least $150 million, and there's going to be some hesitancy, I think, to go there. Diaz, to me, is the easier one. I shouldn't assume, because the Dodgers need a closer. To me, the Yankees probably could consider a closer.
I wonder.
And they're going for a record. Obviously, he's going to try for $20 million plus a year, and it's not. I wouldn't say easy, but Diaz and the Mets. You got the trumpet guy. Diaz loved it. He thrived. I got to think that there's a decent likelihood that they're able to keep him.
So you mentioned the Dodgers and the Yankees, and it's what brings me hesitancy on giving a relief pitcher this much. The Yankees signed Aroldis Chapman to what was then a record contract. We watched that contract die on the vine. The Dodgers signed Kenley Jansen to just below that and ended up moving on from him and bringing in Craig Kimbrell, who was the other big closer who had the big money. I just think the job is so flammable. Now, I think because they have, again, it's like the DeGrom situation. They literally have Drew Smith is their best under control relief pitcher right now, right? Like they have their entire, you mentioned the list, Ottavino, Lugo, even Trevor May, Jolie Rodriguez. These guys have to be replaced. You might not love them. They have to be replaced.
Jolie
yes,
Rodriguez.
But they have 5 or 6 free agents in their bullpen, plus Diaz. So it feels like they need Diaz back to just be the anchor at the end. And then you have to have – I think across the board, because of what we mentioned before, John, that they're going to have – I hate to put the word only – a $300 million payroll. This is an offseason where Billy Epler and his baseball department, they have to have a great personnel offseason. They got to find some stuff at the margins, especially for the bullpen, that comes in and is helpful next year. They got to make their Clay Holmes trade someplace.
They got to bring Diaz back. I understand what you're saying. Now, Kenley's still good. Even after that contract, he signed with Atlanta and is doing well. So, obviously, Chapman, in the long run, did not work out. Obviously, he's not the same guy as Diaz.
Kimbrell wasn't on the Dodger
individual
playoff roster at the end.
I get it.
But
Diaz
traded out of that
such
contract.
a step forward. And if you look at the teams that lasted a while, Clase was a big advantage for Cleveland. Hader, in the end, a huge advantage for San Diego. Now, Suarez ended up being – we were marveled at this guy when we saw him pitch against the Mets. I mean, he's incredible. You have that shutdown closer at the end. It is huge, and it certainly added to the entertainment value. I think the Mets do a terrific job with that at the ballpark, and that added to it. Diaz is a terrific individual, and I think it's reasonable. These contracts are reasonable. We're talking about $40 million. For DeGrom, who pitches, 60? He pitched 60 innings this year, maybe 90 innings the year before. We're talking about $20 million, I think gets it done, $20 million a year for a guy who's saving. I mean, the guy was automatic. It's huge. So, to me, that's the most obvious guy to bring back.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's going to be 5 at 90 to 100 million if you want to keep Diaz.
Well, it might be. You're generous. I was going to say 4 at 80, but you might be right.
Yeah.
It's in that range, and it's an obvious number. Nimmo could go anywhere. Who knows where Nimmo's going?
You could tell me Nimmo comes in at 100 million.
Right.
You could tell me Nimmo comes in at 200 million.
Yeah.
Like, depending on what an analytic team – like the Giants, the Mariners, those kind of teams seeing him like, wow, on base, we think maybe there's still a little untapped power that could be brought out. He can play center field for another year or two before moving to a corner. So, I mean, I'm not sure that he really should get that because I always worry about a guy who gets healthy in his platform year. Really?
Yeah, I think the Mets are. I think some of their people are on the page with you that they're not sure. I don't know. Nimmo kept that uniform on for a long time. Went out and took pictures. Did he expect to leave? I mean, looking at it from a distance, he's obviously a little closer to a situation than I am. It feels like Diaz is probably going to stay, and Nimmo. I mean, he's just like any other free agent. He could go, could stay. We don't know. He seemed to love it here. He's from Wyoming, not typical for New York, but. He hired Scott Boras, so, I'm going to assume, and not that there's anything wrong with this, he's going to go for the biggest contract that he can get, and I think ultimately 90% of guys do that. I mean, Freeman obviously ended up doing that even though he didn't want to do that, so they all do it, so, but he's tough to replace, I think, because unless you do that Judge thing that I suggested earlier, because who's the next best center fielder on the market? Who's the next best leadoff hitter? Marte could lead off, but that was a big advantage having that Nimmo-Marte 1-2 punch. So that was pretty good.
How about you move Marte to center and you sign Michael Conforto for a 1-year deal, get him back into the market the following year, show he's healthy? What do you think of that one?
Sure. You could do that. It's possible. Personally, if I had the choice between Conforto and Nimmo at this point, I'll take Nimmo.
Right. Well, so would I.
Yeah.
Right. But we were talking about like someplace between 100 and 200 million,
right.
And maybe Conforto was like a 1 year at what?
You could get a deal on Conforto.
Yeah. So
maybe they would. But that bullpen, that's to me the key. Ottavino was great this year.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's a New Yorker. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back.
Yeah, right.
You know, a little
He's
more
from
than the
Brooklyn.
$4 million.
Right.
Great.
He played Little League with
God's country, John.
With
Brooklyn.
my cousin's son.
I don't think this
Nate
is going to be
Hurwitz.
interesting to our audience.
Nate Hurwitz. Well, it's a good shout out for Nate.
Give me a scouting report on Hurwitz.
Nate Hurwitz is a good player. Not as good as Ottavino.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Mets got bounced early from the playoffs this year, and that's led to a lot of controversy, John, about this playoff format. And when we come back on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman, we'll talk about that playoff format. John, you might want to cover your head here. I hear the sky is falling. There were a bunch of 100-win teams that went out of the playoffs early this year, so everyone immediately decided that everything needed to be reconfigured because we're not allowed to have upsets in Major League Baseball in the playoffs. I think this bothered you more than just about anything I've seen recently, and you get bothered by a lot of stuff. So tell me what you think about this playoff format.
I was bothered by people being bothered. I did not get this controversy. I thought it was the dumbest controversy I've ever heard, that we shouldn't have a 5-game LDS. The division series should be more than 5 games, should be 7 games. It's always been 5 games, right? Why is now a time to say, because there were a couple of upsets? There are upsets in 7-game series. I mean, how many World Series have we been to where the team that was expected to win fell on its face? I mean, the first one that I covered at Newsday in 1990, nobody thought that Oakland with the Bash brothers was going to lose to the Cincinnati Reds. It went out in 4 games. I mean, you can go through history. We saw the Cardinals, what was that, 06, beat the Tigers. The Tigers had Scherzer and Verlander, right? Was it? Yeah. And I mean, the Cardinals were not very good. They won like 83 or 84 games. We see upsets all the time with 7-game series. So to assume that it's much fairer, I don't believe that. They play 162 games for a reason. It takes that long to figure out who the best teams are. Not 5 games, not 7 games. And beyond that, these series were 3-1, right? So you're going to assume that the team that's got 1 is going to then win the next 3 games to make it now I just don't. I didn't get it. I know we wrote something to that effect. I saw other people write about it. I saw people get up in arms on Twitter. I don't know. What did you think? You think we should switch to 7 games?
No, I think this is ridiculous. I think this is one of those places. I like that we always have good critical awareness when we cover our sport. I think it's better critical awareness than other sports, but the other sports all get celebrated when this happened. I mean, I just want to go through this quickly. Last year, the Super Bowl everyone loved the Super Bowl, right? Bengals and Rams. They were both 4 seeds, right? In the previous round, the 1 seed, the Packers lost to the 6 seed.
Yeah.
In the 49ers, right? The 2 seed, the Buccaneers, lost to the Rams. Nobody decided, let's make the NFL playoffs a best of
1 game.
Right,
those
best of 3 like situation. We all love the NCAA tournament. And an 8th seed from a region, North Carolina, got to the finals last year. We love that, right? Should we start making it 2 out of 3 in that? Last year, the Suns won like 64 games. They had 11 more wins than the Mavericks. They got bounced in the playoffs. Everyone was like, wow, Luka Doncic, this is great. In our sport, the Dodgers win 111 and lose around to a team that's playing really well now, which is the history of October, is who's playing really well and is healthy now is going to win. To your point about the 84-win Cardinals or whatever, like the Mets in 1973, how many games did they win?
Right.
They had great pitching. They were healthy and hot at the right time, and they went to Game 7 of the World Series.
It's a great story.
But it's also the history of our sport. Like the number 1 seed gets through and wins infrequently.
Right. I mean, I think, you're more of an NBA fan than I am, which means, everybody is basically at this point, but good for you. And I think in the NBA, the better team usually wins that first round almost all the time. If it's certainly 1 versus 8, I don't think 8 almost ever wins, right? And
a couple of times in history.
1,
yeah.
But I think upsets are part of sports. And look, San Diego, tried harder than anybody at the deadline. They spent a lot of money for a team in San Diego. They were rewarded. It's a great story. They've never won. I think it's great news that they are in the final 2 in the National League. I think that's awesome. The Phillies, they also tried at the deadline. They ended up getting Syndergaard and Robertson, an ex-Met and a guy who probably should have been on the Mets. once again, a comment about their deadline. But, I think it's a great story. These are teams with talent who can get through these rounds. And I don't see a difference between 5 games, 7 games. It's not going to matter. Like I said, it was 3-1. The dumbest thing I heard was somebody said, "Oh, we should do it like if you win the division, you should be rewarded and get to pick whether you accept your bye or play and make the other team." No one's going to turn down the bye. I'm sorry. Can you imagine if you're the general manager of your team and you say, "We're turning down the bye. We're going to play this because
pretty stupid.
It keeps us from getting rusty. We're going to play this round," and then you're eliminated in that round.
Well, look, happened to the Mets,
right?
No one's going to do that. The Mets led the division pretty much all season.
Right.
Got passed by Atlanta, and then we're at the mercy of playing a hot, healthy team with, to the point before, a great end game with Suarez and Hader, and the Mets got eliminated.
Right.
So you want to avoid the best of 3. I understand there's a rest versus rust theory. There's the top 2 seeds in each league now are going to get 5 days off. And, how do you stay sharp? Simulated games aren't going to do it. And it's very minor. Should we force those teams that are playing in that first round to have to play the literal day after the season ends and shorten it down to 4 games? 4 days, between that. Would that matter much? I don't know.
I mean, Atlanta had a 4-day rest last year, and they ended up winning the World Series.
Right.
So now they had a 5-day rest, and everyone says, "Oh, it wasn't fair to them." Is it that big a difference between 4 days and 5 days? I mean, they just did not play well in that series, and I don't care if it was 7 games. They were getting crushed. The Phillies are hot right now. The Phillies beat them pretty handily. So it wasn't going to change anything, but I couldn't believe how upset people were. Some in our office, won't name any names, but it was, to me, it didn't make any sense at all. 7 games, you're going to get upsets. I mean, going back to the 1960 World Series, now this is before your time, Joel, but I mean, the Yankees were a far better team than the Pirates. Everybody knows that, and the Pirates ended up winning, and that's one of the most memorable and greatest World Series of all time.
It happens in every sport. It happens in every sport. I just don't understand why all of a sudden in this one, instead of celebrating it, look how excited the fans are in San Diego. Look how excited the fans are in Philadelphia. And to your point, these aren't fly-by-night teams.
No,
they
good teams.
Underperformed a little for 162 games, but write the names down on a piece of paper. Were the Mets really better than the Padres? If you're looking and saying I could have roster A or roster B, was the difference really 13 games?
No,
it wasn't. It was very close.
Right.
The Phillies have top-level talent that is outstanding.
And once they changed managers, they became a different team.
Yeah.
I mean, they are a different team now, and they weathered not having Harper, who's their best player, for a long, long time, and came back and got into the playoffs. I know they didn't have a great win total. This first time we have 2 teams that don't have 90 wins in the LCS. A big deal. These are good teams with talent, interesting teams. Their fan bases are excited. They should be excited. Right now, the Phillies are a very, very hot team. I mean, and shouldn't be a shock. They have Real Muto, they have Schwarber, they have Harper, and they have Wheeler and your favorite, Wheeler and Nola at the top of that rotation. And they do have talent in the bullpen, seemingly for the first time, but they're performing now. So, this is a good team. They're both good teams. I guess over 162 games, the Dodgers are the best team, but, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's good for the game. But certainly not negative in any way that it was a 5-game series versus 7.
Yeah, in some ways, and it's a little off topic, John, but just you mentioned the Dodgers. In some ways, the greatest defense for the Yankees not winning, since 2009 is the Dodgers, right? They are really well run. They spend a ton of money. And since 1988, they've won 1 championship in a 60-game season. It's hard to win.
We're not going to see a dynasty like the Yankees of the late 90s. It's a miracle what they were able to do. And, I mean,
now with even another round.
We have another round, but they had multiple rounds then, too. And they did it. Just incredible to think about. They certainly had that pitching and the clutch pitching. El Duque, who you brought up today in the column about Cortez, Pettit, and they had overwhelming pitcher Cone, and they had overwhelming Clemens. They had
and the greatest closer ever.
Right, that helped too. Yeah. That helped too, though. If he'd gotten it in '97 and '01, they could have won another 2 times, potentially. But yes, the greatest closer is inarguably of all time, and I mean, it's amazing that they won still as often as they did to win 4 championships.
So, John, just to wrap up, we're sitting here. The Phillies won Game 1 of the National League Championship Series, which takes away the home field advantage from San Diego. What do you see in that series? What do you think is important going forward here?
Well, it just feels like to me the Phillies are the hotter team. Even though Padres beat their nemesis, the team they couldn't beat, the Dodgers, and so much excitement. I mean, the Phillies really wiped out the Braves, who are a really good team, obviously over 100-win team. I feel like the Phillies right now have the advantage. It's easy to say with a 1-0 lead, but Harper has got 4 home runs. Harper and Machado, really 2 free agents we talked about forever, and we thought, well, maybe are the Yankees going to do it, and they ended up not doing it. But they got Stanton, and we can't knock Stanton at the moment. I mean, he's one of the reasons the Yankees are where they are, but boy, they've turned out to be great free agents. And, the Phillies have great players. Padres have great players, but not performing as well right now. Machado is, but Soto is not. They need to get Soto back, really.
Yeah, the Soto thing. I wonder if we'll look back and the biggest story of the 2022 season was Soto not taking the money.
I think he'll be okay.
I think he'll be okay. I don't think we're going to have to tin cup it.
No,
but it has been interesting. He has not had a good year.
No,
for his talent,
right,
for his talent level, he hasn't had a good year. It hasn't been a good playoffs. There's more, obviously, to come, and we'll obviously talk about all of it week to week here on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman. Thanks for listening to our show, which is brought to you by the New York Post. Thanks, as always, to Jake Brown and Andrew Hartz and the great folks here at MCM who help us produce this show. Don't forget, this show drops on the Yes app. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Joel Sherman 1. He's at John Heyman. Subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple and Spotify. And, of course, join us every week on the show with Joel Sherman and John Heyman.